Hey, folks. I'm the Amazing Vito, and thank you for coming out. You guys are in for a treat. I've got the one and only Chris Herren as Faust, and um, I don't know where he. I don't know. He was there a second ago. Oh, that was wonderful, ladies and gentlemen. Chris Herren as Faust.
Thank you, Vito. It's a pleasure being here. And this is Faust, and he thanks you as well.
That was wonderful. That truly was. Uh, I uh, can you turn up a little bit the volume?
Oh, volume. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, just a little louder, Faust. Isn't that weird telling a mime to be louder? There you are.
Just how's that?
A little
How's that?
lower, a little lower.
Lower?
Oh,
Okay.
yes, that's
How's
fine.
that?
That's great.
Perfect?
Yes,
Okay. I
perfect.
don't know what happened there, but at least we got that out of the way.
No, that's great. That was incredible. That was one of the best intros I've ever seen.
Thank you.
I
Well, that's just in case you're wondering, I am a pantomime or a mime,
okay.
and that is the style of pantomime that I do, and I mix a little bit of magic in there just to kind of bring out this mime and his story. And so the character is Faust. So I am a mime, and I can do all this, the silent stuff, but what I really thrive in is when I mix magic and pantomime together. And so that is what I do.
What quickly what pantomime? What is that? What's
Yeah.
pantomime?
Well, that's a good question. So pantomime, everyone knows what mime is, and mime is typically a character with a white face, and he doesn't talk, and he creates these illusions through movement and gesture. But pantomime is actually better described as an older version of mime. And you see Charlie Chaplin doing it. Buster Keaton, a lot of the silent film actors doing pantomime, and that is the acting without talking and communicating through expression and movement. And so that's what pantomime is, and it actually dates all the way back to the Roman Empire and ancient Greece, and that's essentially the beginnings of what we call modern theater. But we all do pantomime, Vito. I think what people forget is that before we even started talking as human beings and developing the written language or the spoken language, people were talking through movement and gestures. That's why a smile is a smile across all cultures. It's because it is something that we know as human beings, these different movements and gestures, especially if you just point. This is pantomime, just pointing or holding something and giving it to you. It's just a form of expression. So that's what pantomime is. And I think what mime is really known for and what people associate it with is these illusions like pulling a rope.
Hmm.
This is mime. And it's these illusions of storytelling, and that's what contemporary mime is. Very ancient arts.
Yes, but you see, it's. I think there's a reason for that is because you don't need to speak the a German or Japanese or whatever. If you could convey what you just said, if I do this,
Yes.
I mean, I'm hungry, I would like something to drink. It's a form of communication,
Yeah.
but but you take it to the next level. You make it like elegant and beautiful, and that is, instead of saying, I'm starving, like, if you're lost somewhere and you get directions and the guy's doing this, but if Faust does it, you still get lost, but you're like, you were entertained.
Yes. I think all in all, Vito, it's just that's exactly what you said, is that I'm trying to entertain you. And you don't necessarily have to get the story, but if you just feel a little bit of it, I think you get the impression that Faust is trying to communicate through his movement and gestures and really trying to express an emotion. And I
Yes.
think I do the job, at least as a storyteller, that if you feel something, then I think we've accomplished more than me just showing you a trick. And
Yeah, and
yeah,
I think there's a beauty to it that where you see people where they'll have something stupid to say, and then there's people that understand, and appreciate it and realize how incredibly difficult that is. That is not an easy thing. You go to school to learn that.
yes, I've fortunately I've had great teachers in magic and as well as pantomime or mime. And my teachers, just to acknowledge who they are, my pantomime coach is Dan Griffiths, and he was a student of Marcel Marceau. A lot
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of people who are from the 70s and the 80s know who that is, and he was the great master mime.
Mm.
And no one could express it like him. And I had seen a video of Marcel Marceau and him talking about the art, and that's when I fell in love with this sort of poetry in motion.
Mhm.
And that's where my love for pantomime and mime was created. And then my teacher Jeff McBride, he was a childhood hero of mine. I seen him on TV, and fortunately later on in life I met him, and I expressed my interest in mask and pantomime. And I said, if I were to do magic and actually perform it on the stage, I wanted to do it the way he did it, because Jeff is famous for his masked act,
Yes, yes, yes.
and like you and thousands of people, when they seen that, they saw something completely different.
Oh, yeah.
and I loved what he did. He also studied pantomime and mime and kabuki theater, and so that kind of showed in his style. And although our styles are different, I knew that if I was going to learn this magic, I wanted to learn it the way he did it, because I just connected with his sort of expression of magic. And so I've been studying under him for years now, developing this character Faust.
He has a kind heart. I think that's what because I remember him. People don't know that, but I look young, but I've been watching. You fell in love with Doug Henning, and
Yes.
but and if people don't know who that is, you please look him up.
Yes.
Uh, but with McBride, I remember seeing him doing the mass, and I couldn't believe he must have had. It felt like he had 100 masks that he
Yes.
was pulling out, and they were all different faces, and his whole routine was this emotion
Hmm.
because each mask had a different face, and you kept thinking, how is he doing that? And he's in, again, he's an incredible magician, and he's also, you could tell he studied kabuki, and he's a
Yeah.
very do you feel that for you when you're working or thinking of something,
Yeah.
are you at a different place?
I think, that's a great question. I think I don't, Faust, for me, when I was inspired to create this character, I wanted to tell a story outside of who I was as a person. And so I had to develop this character by actually writing about it, as you would write a story or a script. So I created this life for this character. So when I go into character with this, with Faust, I try to honor him the best I can by interpreting how he would have lived and how he sees the world. And because I think as from my own personal experience as being Chris, my experience is limited. And but since Faust is this fictitious character, I was able to just create this whole world for him. And so by honoring his character and really, believing that when I put on that mask, I play Faust and not me, I think, it really brings his voice out. And I want to honor him by giving him the integrity of of being able to give, the audience or whoever I'm entertaining, the real emotion behind Faust. And Faust is a very tragic character.
Yeah, can you tell a little? Like I know the Faust. The first time I heard it was from the Monty Python. There was a
Yeah.
routine. There was a routine, and they said Faust, and I thought that is something. These guys are geniuses. So
Yes.
they're
Yes.
they're they're talking about somebody who is Faust.
Faust was, well, more famously known as an 18th century book by Goethe, and this great author had written about a guy who sold his soul to the devil. And I think that's how we know him today, is a guy who sold his soul to the devil. And I think that's a very classical theme, even in the contemporary world. But for me, when I read the book, I had kind of sympathized with this guy, Faust, who basically had everything, but yet he sold his soul to the devil for ultimate power. But I asked a deeper question after reading the story. Why would anyone sell his soul to the devil? And I came up with mere desperation. I said the only way I would do that is if I was desperate. And in his case, I think he was desperate to change. Now, I kind of felt that we had this sort of similarity because at the time I read that book, I was going through cancer. And that
Oh,
was, yeah, 10 years ago. I'm okay now. But I think if it hadn't been for that experience and reading that book, I would have never come up with Faust, because when I asked that question, why would anyone do that? I said, what if I had a character who had that same emotion within and he was desperate to change? What would he act like and what would he be like? So my character Faust didn't sell his soul to the devil, but I think if the opportunity presented itself, I think he would be that desperate he would. But my character has nothing to do with the whole deal of the devil and him. It's the emotion. It's the emotion of desperation that I wanted to key on. And everything that he does as far as a magical routine, like what I showed you, is who he wants to be. Because what he's really trying to tell people watching him is, this is what I daydream about all day long. I want to change. I want to be this performer, this mime that I should have been, but because of my tragic life, I couldn't I couldn't accomplish it. And so he daydreams about this stuff. And so that's the whole point of my Faust, at least, is just another variation of the original story. But I tapped in more or less with the emotion of who Faust is.
Yes, that's beautiful because I think that everybody that, and I've watched, and I'm going to play a little bit of what Chris does. Uh, Everybody wants, um, like what you just said. Would you sell your soul to the devil,
Right.
for this or to get this? And you know that if you were to do that, you'd have a good time for a little bit, but at the end of the day, you got to pay your bill. So,
Right.
uh, what you convey is there's this feeling of desperation of, because everybody feels that in their life where they go, no matter where you work or what you do, we all want to be a rock star or we want to be some type of celebrity. Not today, but but you want to be somebody greater. You're stuck. You're sitting there saying, I'll do anything, to get out of this mess. And I think you convey that, and it's not just, you just don't just do pantomime and mime. You also do, magic, and you throw that in there. That you have, with your act. See, my act is very simple. It's horrible. So when you could start here at horrible, you don't have to go. Anything you do is up. But where you start is this moment of just intrigue, where you're like, who is this? What, immediately you're like, I want to hear this person's story. And when you throw that magic and the emotions that you bring out, I showed my daughter, and she was just
Thank you.
in love. She just said, this is brilliant.
Thank
and
you.
and that's not me kissing your tailpipe. That's just the reality, because the work that you've put into what you've done, I mean, this could it could it speaks volumes. I mean, you could, as you say, I'm glad that you've beat cancer and stuff like that. I'm glad. But the thing I always ask myself is, when I pass, are people going to remember anything I do? Like that? I think that's the burning question. Am I, Larry King, who just passed away, I remember every interview he would say, I can't imagine not being here anymore, you know? And, but he's got all those interviews that, people are going to watch. With
Right.
you, 1,000 years from now, you're still going to have fans, you know?
Thank
And that is something where, people go watch it and just go, this is beautiful. And they'll learn from it, or be entertained from it, or, just sit back and say, I want a story, something that any movie, any like I love a movie that I hate sad endings,
Yeah.
but I love something that can move you,
Yeah.
makes you think, and that is something that you could tell that you've studied it for years. This is something that people think, yes, I can do this. I could take 4 or 5 courses. This is a very hard skill. You
Yeah.
know, this is something that does not everybody can do. I worked with a female comic who uh, studied to be a professional clown,
Yeah.
uh, and it was a 3-year course. It wasn't weekends, and it was hard stuff. Uh,
Absolutely.
so you know when you said I'm going to put in magic, did you have a background already in magic?
Well, I was like any other kid. I started when I was 7, 5, somewhere around there.
Oh,
And but I always dabbled in magic. I loved magic, just like anyone else. I was no prodigy or anything like that. I didn't necessarily find magic till really after cancer. I did shows, kid shows. I have kids, and I did shows for them, and it was just all for fun. But I think that turning point for me was when I went through this very dark time in my life where I developed this Parkinsonian tremor in my hand where it started shaking uncontrollably that I couldn't hold a sponge ball per se.
oh dear.
But that even then I still watched magic, and I still entertained myself with just reading about magic. And it took me about 5 years to through therapy and just recovering physically. And finally, my wife had said, you should take a class with Jeff McBride. He's having a class in Vegas. And I said, you know what? I'm not ready for that. I don't have the skill set for that. Well, facing a life and death circumstance, I was just like, you know what? What the heck? I'm just going to go out there, have a good time, kind of, refill this thirst for magic. And even then, when I took the class, it was just a basic class. I didn't have the ambition to perform up until I started taking personal, like, um, one-on-one sessions with Jeff. And he basically ran it through me, and he says, magic is just a journey that everyone takes, and every step is a great adventure. And you don't go into it thinking that you're going to be good. You just do it because you love it. And so when I did that, and I didn't care about performing, and I didn't care about getting booked or winning competitions, I just took the first step, and I fell in love, and I just absorbed myself into making myself happier with magic. And it did. And I guess, and Jeff always tells me, if there are some things that will love you back, but there are some things that will love you back even more. And so when I chose these tricks, I felt like these things I connected with, and I could do, because I'm not very good with cards. And I think, the reason why I'm saying this is because the hardest thing to do in any art form, I think, is finding your authentic voice and really your place in it. And I think once you find that, you kind of go on this trajectory of, getting better at it. And whatever it was, because when I went into it, people didn't get this. They didn't get what I was doing. They thought it was weird. And but I just kept on trying to find it. And I think that search is what really got me to where I am today, where I'm comfortable with this version of Faust, because Faust was kind of different in the beginning.
Mhm.
So, And I did put in the time. Once I fell in love and it fell in love with me, like, you pick up a prop and you could just do it with your eyes closed. I think we all find that. And if we embrace those things and, not so much the things that don't love us back, then we begin to find our voice. I don't know, it might not make sense, but for me, I really struggled with finding my voice, but I knew that I wanted to express magic and pantomime in this way, a more poetic way. And I admit, Vito, not everyone gets it. Not everyone likes what I do. But, I came to terms. I I want to be me. And a lot of the times I thought, wow, people are going to look at me kind of weird because I'm wearing a mask. I'm expressing this very old style of, art that no one really cares about too much these days. And a lot of my friends and family didn't even know I was into that. They knew I was into magic, but I think if you take the risk, then there is where you find your voice. If
Yes, yes,
you know,
because that's something that you said that was very important. Where you said, I'm going to go see Jeff McBride, but who am I? And I did that for years. I want to learn some magic. I'm sick and tired of just doing stand up. I want to do silly magic. Um, and I can't, and I finally went out and sought it. And I didn't, I didn't have Jeff is a genius,
yes,
but when you went there, you were like, I'm here to learn. I'm here to, you know, I want to grow as a person.
yes,
And I did I do this now with anybody that I interview that I've wanted to interview for a long time. And I don't know if it throws them off or what, but just before we start, like with when I interviewed Max Maven,
yes.
I as soon as he came on, he said hello. And I said, "Max?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, I just want to tell you I love you." And it threw him off. He kind of he and it was the first time I think he's ever been thrown off because because I remember him and how much joy he brought to me. And
Yes,
I wanted to let him know how important he is to
yeah,
me, you
yeah,
know. So that is to reach out, and because afterwards, you know what would happen? The interview would be gone, and I would sit there and say, I should have told him I loved him, you know.
yes,
And that's like such a regret. And I think if what you did, there was this calling, a hunger, I would say, inside of you, where you said, I know what I want. I know, but it's that going through, and you're going to hit a roadblock here, and most people stop and run out of gas, but you're like, there's this hunger because inside that it's something will come of it, something good.
right,
You just might need a little bit of guidance. And that's what McBride did. Is like, listen, this is what you need. And it's the thing is, when you have in it, a teacher that is of that level, anything they say, you're like, well, okay, okay, okay. But what they're telling you is something that you go, oh, some things, yes, of course, but other things are so you always knew this,
yes,
so there's that, yes, there's new stuff, but there's always stuff where you thought that, no, I was wrong, but no, you were right,
yes,
because if you go by your heart, you'll be fine.
yeah,
And I think that's where you have such a passion. There's this uh, gentleness, kindness. He could be an axe murderer, folks, but there there is this genuine. There's an honesty there,
yes,
and
yes,
that's where people at first go, What's that? What's this all about?" And then they realize, yes, he's speaking the truth. And
Yes.
that's important. I think that's what you I mean, you know, from seeing what you've done, you've worked so incredibly hard, and
Thank you.
it shows. Um, do you mind if I just show a little clip? Just
Yeah,
I want to show everybody just a little clip of what
absolutely.
Chris does here. Okay. Oh,
Thank you, Vito.
that was so beautiful there.
You know, the funny thing is I did that promo reel on my phone, so it wasn't like I paid huge money for it. I was just kind of like, you know what, if I'm gonna get, serious into this business, I gotta have a promo reel, and so people can see or get a glimpse of what I did. And so what you saw there was just a culmination of different videos that I did. Now it's funny because I did videos because I wasn't getting booked at all, you know. And so Jeff was just saying, no, don't worry about that. Just keep making the videos. Make the videos. Just you need the performance time. Just keep going. And so eventually pre-COVID, that's all I did was just make these full routines like the one I showed you, and I recorded. And that's how I would communicate with Jeff. I would say, "Hey, check out what I did. I need your critique." And then, he'd tear it up and he'd be like, "No," but that's how I got better, is by actually seeing myself. But, even then, because my level of understanding magic wasn't as, well as Jeff, what I saw was completely different than what he saw. And that was the key to a teacher. It was like I thought I did good, but in reality, I wasn't. And when I look back at it now, he was right. There were so many things that could have been improved. And so that is, Jeff kind of cuts down your mistake level by years. And at some point I just had to trust what he said. And that's the hardest part with the student is you you have to trust that the teacher is leading you in the right direction.
Yes, this. Yeah, I couldn't agree more because I had you know, some people um in the business, uh you know, you're their competition.
Yeah.
So sometimes, and I've had this happen where they will go, hey, you know, it'd be awesome if you did this instead of that. And it's really, they're giving you the worst advice on purpose.
Right. Right.
And yeah, and that was always a turnoff for me. I always thought, people go, why do you always want to kill this person? And it's just like, you know what they did, you know? And with Jeff, again,
Yeah.
he's seen it all. So I've performed
Yes.
in front of, uh, uh, a pretty big name. And when I had to go, like I was trying to work for Yuck Yucks, is a big chain.
Yeah.
And I remember they said, you got to go in front of Mark Breslin. And I thought, okay, I'm going to audition to get, to work for comedy club. I thought I'd be in front of a comedy uh, a room full of people, and because you could, you feed off of people, and
Yeah.
and I went there, and it was just him. He stood in the back with his arms crossed, and he said, "Go ahead." And it threw me. This is a room that seats maybe 500 people, and he's just staring at me like this.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
didn't laugh once, and my voice was cracking,
Yeah.
and it was horrible. And I didn't know he was going to do that, and nobody warned me. But he wanted to see. He said to me, "You know what? Come back to me. You're not ready yet." And he was right. But it was one of those sinking feelings, when you drive home in your car and you're just thinking, I can't believe I did that. Like that, like why did I do that? Why did I, I should have focused just on him, just do my act. And instead I was concerned about hearing my own voice and not
Yes.
having a crowd. And what he was doing was, hey, when people come out and pay to see you, if there's a rough night and no one's laughing and you're not getting them back, that's a bad sign, and I can't hire you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was a hard lesson, but it was a lesson where you go home, you get where you just think, I that's never going to happen again. Next time I go, I'm going to go full force, and I'm not going to care. Well,
Right.
I'm going to care, but not I was nervous and just shaking like a leaf. So
Yeah.
yeah, and anyways, so
No,
that was my wonderful audition. So
it's a great point, though. I think that if you don't go through that, then you really, the learning process isn't really reinforced. You can practice all you want in front of a mirror or your friends, but under those circumstances, you'll remember it for the rest of your life, and you'll be better prepared for it,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. Do you get, before a performance, people always say to me, they go, "Do you get nervous?" And it's, yes, I do, but it's a different type of nervous. And they always say, "What do you mean different type?" And the nervous is, I know what I'm going to do. It's just I want to execute it the right way.
Right.
So do you get nervous?
Oh, yes, of course. Dale Salwack, who is the gentleman of magic. He does a great zombie ball, and he runs the Chavez School of Magic in Los Angeles. I was competing in the Philippines, and he was headlining along with Jeff, and I happened to come across him in backstage, and I asked him the same thing. Do you get nervous? Because I do. I'll tell you that right now. I get nervous all the time. And he told me, and he kind of summed it up for me. He goes, I do get nervous. And let me tell you why. Because you get nervous because you care about what you're doing. So I kind of reframed my thinking. If I didn't get nervous, then I kind of don't care whether I fail or succeed out there. So it's kind of a check, on myself that if I'm feeling nervous, it's because I care that I do want to entertain all of the audience for that night, and it's perfectly fine. Jeff doesn't call it nervous. He calls it anxious. He
Yeah.
says, you're feeling excited. But the lesson there is that he's telling you to reframe how you perceive what this nervousness is about. And I'll tell you, there's always something going wrong every night for me. You know,
Oh, I could my
you know,
life.
right,
Right.
right. I think, but it's your ability to adjust is, and you wouldn't have that experience had you not, encountered them in the past. But I think it's perfectly okay to be nervous. Would I rather, have it lessen? Of course. But you know what? When you come out and you did a great job and you see that you've entertained people, you feel that gratification at the end that this is why I do it
Yes.
because you cared from the outright. And I think, I don't want to be in that mode where you just go out on this stage and you're this robot just doing your thing and you don't feel anything after. You don't hear the audience. I don't want to be like that. I want to hear every pin drop that goes in that so I could react to it. And you're a comedian, you know how to react to your surroundings. It's very important to be that acute.
Yes, I usually cry a lot, like, and that people go, "Oh, that's hilarious," and I'm like, "That I'm really just buying time," you know, because you got to do it. You got 45 minutes, and it's like I got to kill time, you know.
Right, right.
The only time I get really nervous where I get ill is, and this is what bothered me when I interviewed Max. I said, Max, do you get nervous before a a performance? And he goes, no. And I was like, man, I really love you. No. So uh you know when I get nervous is the last show when the drunks come in and it's just you're up there as a lion tamer pretty much. And I hate those nights because I understand it's work, but
Yes.
it's not something where I want people to laugh at what I do, not laugh at, a bunch of people screaming and yelling and just being disrespectful. I think that has as society, I think
Yeah.
we've lost the ability of just, do you go to a theater or someone's house and just start screaming like an imbecile? Or if you're in the middle of you're working away and I purposely yell something out. I have no idea why people do that. But I just think it's very disrespectful. And I remember Jeff McBride said something when he was starting off doing, if you know the story where he was uh they were he had to do a show and they were eating and they weren't paying attention to him and they were being rude and he was throwing his cards in their mashed potato, taking
Yes.
throwing his mask here, and it's just he could
Right.
care, and I just thought, yes, he's human, you know, because that's how I would feel,
Yes.
and that's how I feel sometimes when you're performing and they're just being, they look at the character and they go, "Oh, this guy loves it if you yell up, yell or be, obnoxious." And it's like, no, I don't. I just I like interacting with people, but I do not like dealing with drunks.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So have you ever here, let me phrase this. What is the worst show you've ever that's ever happened? Because I've got doozies that you would go, really?
Yes. Well,
What's
yeah, worst show. Worst show. Well, I didn't really have too many hecklers, but it was exactly the opposite of that. I think, when I went out, one time, I think I already got the impression that there was something wrong with the tech already. The sound was going wrong. And you could feel that by the first song that's being played. And my whole act, at least in the past, was just music driven. And I would just do one right after the other. And, for some reason, This crowd was a drinking crowd, and Jeff always tells me you have a drinking crowd and a thinking crowd. Know which one you're dealing with.
Mhm.
Tonight it was a drinking crowd, and they were not clapping. Maybe because they had like this mime phobia or something. But every act that I did up until the last one, no one clapped at all. It was silent. And then to top it off, my music went out in the middle of my closer.
Right.
And so I literally had to do my whole act silent. But then when people, and I went like this, like a mime would, I continued on. And then that's when I won them. They started rooting me and supporting me. And that was the only time they clapped. But for me, I had learned so much
Yes,
from that.
exactly. Yes. Of course, because in your mind, you're going, you want to jump off stage, but you
Right.
stood up there like a professional, and you said, "I'm gonna make this work. I have to find a way to make this work."
Yes.
You know, and that is something that that is a lost art in itself,
Yeah.
where people.
Now that you mentioned that, Vito, I had a long talk with Nathan Fan, who is who is on Masters of Illusion, Penn and Teller. We were talking about this very subject, and he told me, he said sometimes it's good to tell them that something went wrong. It humanizes you.
Yes, yes, yes.
And not knowing what I did by going like this, it humanized, like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm gonna go with it anyways.
Yeah.
And I think that's when, because with the mask I can almost be off-putting or not human, I guess. But in that case, it humanized the character, and sometimes you just have to embrace that moment, and you might be surprised with the reaction.
I usually, what I like to do is swear really loud. And so
Yes.
I've done that joke about 15,000 times and I screwed it up, or I've done this magic bit and it's horrible and it came out wrong. Um, or the sound system. One of the worst shows, I did it with the uh, Chris, uh, Chris Gamble, the freak show. The stuff that he does is, we had to do a show together, and I was the MC and the comedian, and then I would have to bring him out, and then it was also, but below us was a strip joint.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Okay.
no, it wasn't nice. It was horrible because they was so loud,
Right.
and
Right.
you're up there and you're like, ladies and gentlemen, and you would hear it from the bit, give it up for Candy, and just you hear the clapping, and you're just going, they're not clapping for me, they're clapping for some girl that,
Right.
so it's one of those deals.
Yeah.
And yeah, where I've gone, played a place, where your agent will send you out and you're sitting there going, okay, you're trying to find this place. And I remember pulling up to this place. They had chickens. They had
Nice.
chickens. It was these people. It had like, it was like it was a place where all these, it was weird. But anyways, they had chickens. And at the end, I'm not making this up. At the end, they said, "Hey, we got a gift for you. We really like the show, and it was a good show." And they gave me a whole bunch of chicken eggs, and
Oh, nice.
but it was the best chicken eggs I've ever had.
I bet.
Oh, it was just, they were just made while I was on. They laid some eggs for me, and I laid a couple myself. So yes, you learn so much. But what I love about what you do, I'm a huge vaudeville fan. I love
Yes.
vaudeville.
Yes.
And I just watched the movie of Stan and Ollie, and how people don't know that, they a lot of guys like W.C. Fields, Chaplin. all Fatty Arbuckle, they all started, and even magicians, they all started on vaudeville because back then there was no TV or radio. So you would go see a show and it would be stuff that Faust does, and then you would have a comedian. And then if it was, after 11 o'clock, they would have the blue show where they would have a vaudeville act, you
Yeah.
know, and then the comedian would come out, and then there would be a magician. And I love those. And one of the shows that was very successful that I would do with Chris was a vaudeville show,
Yes.
because
Yes.
we would have everything from jugglers to magicians, comedians, to a guy that could pick up his nose and freak out the crowd. And
Yeah.
I always made sure when he would do that, I would say, when are you guys serving food? Because you're gonna love this. So but I don't you miss are there times that you just sit there and go, man, I really wish vaudeville was still around?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think I've studied enough of vaudeville to fall in love with it, or at least, kind of romanticize with the idea of doing something like that. But I mean, there was an art in just putting together that kind of show, with people like Chaplin and Keaton, and I think anytime I participate in a show, I always look for that. I look for that variety and that sort of reminiscent of that bygone era kind of aesthetic. I mean, obviously, I'm influenced by it, and vaudeville is certainly something that I try to implement in my act. But I think, I sometimes I think I grew up in the wrong time.
Yeah, me too. I
But you know what? We make the best of what we have, and I still, and you know what? Going to this whole virtual thing, I think we're able to, do something like that, at least aesthetically we can. But I do love that era. I really, don't think that I mean, these were great legends of the stage, from comedians to jugglers to guys who could just do things with the cigarette. I mean,
Oh, I know.
and they made their life off of a seven minute routine, and they
Yeah,
toured like that. That's
yeah,
all they did for their whole career.
but
7 minutes.
yeah, but they would do that 7 minutes four,
Yes.
14 times that day.
Yes.
You could only imagine doing an act. Some of these guys, you hear the stories that they were like, yes, we had to do it like 12 times a day, you know,
Right.
and they weren't getting a whole lot of money. But uh, I just love the whole. Could you imagine the atmosphere? I mean, if you're out there and you're working and you've got your opener, your MC, and then your headliner, so that's it. But
Yeah.
the old days, they'd be like 30 people, 30,
Yes.
and it would be packed. And
Yeah.
you had to be funny. You had to be either a great singer, a great mime. Yeah,
Yeah.
you had to be good,
Yeah.
or you just were not going to get booked. and
Right.
and that is something that uh I think there's this you hear the stories and they're like, yeah, it wasn't that great, it wasn't, but you look at it and you just go, to me it was it looked like a magical time that we live in such a, like, I get it, back then it was tough,
Yes.
it was tough. And but these days I just think we are becoming, uh I don't know the right word. We're becoming more cynical, more, and I'm a pretty I'm considered deadpan kind of guy, but people are very incredibly their level of I don't know the right word. It's just it's just not respectful, not just they cannot wait to say something rude or be
Right.
and I just I don't get that in people, and when I see what you do, I just sit there and I go, "Here's a person that he's working so hard to entertain me,"
Yeah.
you know?
I
And
think there are a
that
lot
is
of
beautiful. That is something where people need to stop, slow down, just enjoy.
yeah, yeah. I think that sometimes I agree. I agree with everything you say. I think today a lot of people's attention spans are very short, and they're for whatever reason they're they don't they will just insult you without knowing they insult you. I
Mhm.
don't know if that's true, but yeah, like you said, you might have a guy who comes into your show and his main objective is to heckle you. I don't know what that is. Maybe it has existed all this time and whatnot, but I think it's more pronounced in this generation for sure. I had a guy, we were at the Magic Castle, and there's a little area in the Magic Castle where members can perform new material, and it's in the cellar there, and you can go, and I always go with my friends whenever I'm in town. And one guy came up to me, not knowing what I did, and he says, "I go, you guys, would you like to see a show or a small magic show for like 30 minutes?" And he was like, "Yeah," because and his response was, "Yeah, and I'm here to find out how you do your tricks." And he sat right in the front row. And I was thinking like, well, how do you entertain someone like that who is not willing to be entertained, but he is there to reveal you.
Like, what do you mean? He was there to like, was he trying to do something like if he were to do a trick, he would say, "I know how that's done." Is that
Right.
what he was trying to do?
Yeah, so he was like, I'm not here to basically what I got, and this is just me
Oh,
interpreting.
that's a nightmare
He
because
was
I would not be happy.
Yeah, so he told me, I'm here to try and figure out what you're doing. And he's probably being smart or drunk, and he was clearly drunk. But I mean, how do you deal with something like that? I just performed. I did my thing. He actually remained quiet because I don't think he suspected the type of act that I was doing. And not that what I do is any, I'm not doing like bleeding hand techniques or anything like that. I think he just was kind of caught off guard about seeing the type of act. So he remained very quiet. But, how do you deal with that? I mean, I thought it was kind of impolite to just come up to a performer that you don't know and say, "Look, I'm not here to be entertained. I'm here to try and figure out how you do that."
Yeah, yeah.
Like, how do you how do you
They're oblivious.
right?
They're absolutely oblivious. I'll get this, uh, uh, Chris. I'll get this. I'll get, um, "Hey, I was trying to help you." Where if I have a dice and, the dice are supposed to be a certain number, and, they're purposely not saying the right number, they're purposely forgetting a card, they're on stage trying to, and it's just beyond frustrating. And you have to work with it, but how I got a few people is, it's very simple. If they're like, uh, I'll always, what you do is when you get off stage for the next act, because if I'm emceeing or if I'm headlining, I see what's going on.
Yeah,
So what I'll do is, I'll tell the bouncer that that table is a problem, and because he's a, like, not the whatever he's, Frankenstein would know, he needs a brain. He's like, hey, whatever, they're, you know, unless they start a fight, and I'm like, no, no, no. Your job, a good club would sit there and say, you're a problem. You can't come in here. And if you cause a problem, you're out of here immediately. But
right.
for places that weren't doing that, what I would do is I would wait where, like, right where the entrance, where the bathroom was, and I would tell the guy that was just being a total knob, uh, I would tell him to, go into the ladies' bathroom because the other one's full,
Yeah.
and he would go in the ladies' bathroom, and I would yell over to the bouncer going, "Hey, he's in the ladies' bathroom." And then, they would get him out of there, and he would be like, "I was told to go in here." And it was just like, "You see? You see how you get rid of problems?"
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so what do you see as, I mean, you've toured all over, you've had great teachers, but you seem like the type of person that you'll always wanna know more, you'll always read another book, you'll always is that a drive that you've always had?
I think so. You know, once I really found my place in the whole, the expression of magic, right? Once I really found what I wanted to do and how to do it, I think that's what drives me. So the first thing, all the pantomime is about storytelling. I love stories. I wrote about Faust first as a story before I even thought about performing him as a character. But I wasn't as good enough, or at least I thought I didn't have that voice to write down and create a novel or anything. It just happened to stumble upon magic and, kind of fall in love with it again. But as far as the future, I'm beginning to dabble in storytelling magic with words, and just learning different stories. I talk to Jeff about it all the time. And I think, taking off the mask will kind of give a good contrast and more depth with, the mask version of Faust. And I do want to tell stories as just me. And, I love stories because they're all about meanings and metaphors sometimes. And they really bring out the imagination. I just find myself, a lot of people won't be into it, but I just find myself like falling in love with it. And then when I started, memorizing these scripts, and I just said, you know what, I think I'm finding the same connection I did with the mask. And and that will come down later on down the road. But I like constant reinvention of self and refining myself as a performer. Now, does it mean I'm going to get anywhere with it? Am I going to be like uber famous or anything? That's not even in my head. And I think you mentioned, Vito, something very, very important to me is legacy. You have kids, I have kids, and if anything, I would love to do this for them and their kids thereafter. They can see that, I've left a legacy behind for them to remember. If anything, I want them to see that, I love the magic and I'm hoping that they would too. But if not, I have these stories, and hopefully they'll find meaning and happiness through it by seeing someone who's in their family line. So legacy is why I do this.
Right. Yes, I totally understand that. I totally understand that. One last question.
Sure.
Um, have you ever had where you say you've performed in front of a kid, or uh, and they're not sure, and I've seen this, uh, where they're kind of they're frightened,
Yes.
and but for about 2 minutes they're frightened, but then all of a sudden they're okay, and
Yeah.
they just become the most, they're glued into you, you know, where they're just like, okay, I was scared for absolutely no reason, because now I'm I'm just in love,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. Has that has happened?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking about a mask, a mask that can really be scary in a way. For some adults, the mask can be scary, but that's where pantomime comes in for me. I always ask the kids, especially if it's a younger crowd, is anyone scared of masks? And right away they're like, no, we're brave. Great, you know. And I think pantomime for me comes into play because I'm very aware of how my body is expressing, communicating and expressing emotion. So the way Faust, expresses himself, it's this sort of kind of, this love that I want to put out from a distance. And kids are smart. Kids are very smart. They feel that because I seen kids just like staring and not moving, and just when they were just, fidgety. And when Faust came out and the music went on, and they just got it, they felt the innocence. And that's how I know that I'm doing what I'm doing right. And yes, initially it can be a little bit, uncomfortable, but kids are smart. They will realize what is genuinely, honest and sincere.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping adults will find the same in Faust. And like I said, it's not for everyone. It just
Well, I think when people open up I think more people are. I always tell people this. You know, you must get this where if somebody says to you, "This movie was," or "This person was awful," or "This movie is awful," or "This is awful," and then you go there and you go, "I actually liked it."
yeah,
I
yes,
think there's been such a stigma that and they had it with the stand-ups. They're all sarcastic loudmouths, and until they see a stand-up that isn't, and they're going, oh, okay, they're not jerks or whatever they need to be or whatever character. uh
right,
I think it's the same thing with any genre that you're doing. There's such a stigma to it that once you go and see them, the stigma disappears and then they crave it.
yeah, yeah,
It's something where they go, hey, you know what, I really like that. Like I never thought I would like live theater.
yes,
And then I went and watched it, and I just thought, this is incredible, this is beautiful, I love the smell, the atmosphere, you know
yeah,
and this whole time I stayed away from it, you know and it was
yes,
just such a not a very smart move. So if there is something that you're not too sure of, go out and see it, and you'll be surprised that I guarantee you 9 out of 10 you'll enjoy it.
yes,
So
yes.
where are people gonna see you next? Like where's the next time we could see you?
I think, well, I do a weekly live stream,
Okay.
and they can follow me on Facebook and I feature different magicians. I'd love to have you come on, Vito, and just
Well, you
share magic.
you want an audience? If you want an audience, you shouldn't have me on. So
We just go on Facebook Live. I like doing it because it's really just something to share with friends. And to me, magic is a community, and everyone has a different voice to express. So I'm on almost every week.
I appreciate that. And can you give me a link to that?
Yes,
And then
absolutely. Well, it's on my Facebook page, Chris Herren as Faust, and you can also look at Faust and Company, and you could see the live stream feed on there once I go on. And usually I go on every Fridays, and that's probably the best place to find me is just on Facebook, Chris Herren as Faust. And if I'm doing anything virtually, you could find it there. I am going to be doing something live. I don't know when this your show is going to air, but I'm going to be in Rancho Cucamonga like next week with Jonathan Molo and Travis Martois at the New Haven or Haven City Marketplace, and it's
okay.
going to be an outdoor, socially distanced magic show. But yeah, I think Facebook is the best place to see
Okay,
where I'm at.
I'll put a link to that.
Yes,
I want
please.
to say thank you so much for your time. It really, I think the most important thing, what I love is when somebody gives you their time, and I am very appreciative of that, that you've actually given me some of your time, and I will not forget that. That means a lot. So
Thank you, Vito.
that
It's a pleasure to be on your show. And you know what? If you would like, before we close, I'd like to end with some magic, if that's okay with
sure,
you.
well, please. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Herren as Faust. Watch.
Vito, this one is for you. It's called the toast. It's a toast to your magic and to your health. And may you too find your magical journey in magic. Enjoy, my friend.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. That was Chris Herren as Faust. Thank you, folks. I'm the Amazing Vito. Please subscribe and be good. Thank you.